So powerful we are. So powerful we are. So if you see us coming, just know we're making a change. And we're not running, no, we're not going away. We stand together and we can stop the rain. Just know that if we came to make a change. Make a change, make a change, make a change. Oh yes, we came to make a change together. Side by side, troublemakers, head high. Oh, the journey may be long, but we still keep singing a song. So if you see us coming, just know we're making a change, and we're not going away. We stand together, just know that if we came to make a change, make a change, make a change, make a change. Oh yes, we came to make a change. R-W-B. We came to make a change. W-B. We came to make a change. Oh!
Well, this is amazing. Florida is amazing. Y'all are gonna, I think there's gonna be some surprises coming out of Florida on Tuesday. All right, y'all, my name is Katie Paris. I'm the founder of Red Wine and Blue. You know, Red Wine and Blue has held about 1,600 grassroots events all across this country over the last year. And I think you all have joined many of those in the last few days across Florida. And I think many of you have also joined us on Zoom for our virtual events. But guess what? This is the first time that we are streaming live across our platforms. And also onto Heather Cox Richardson's Facebook page. So it's the first time we've had a live audience live stream. So this is special, y'all. And I'm so glad you're here to do this with us. Okay, so the reason why Red Wine and Blue is here is because y'all have a huge opportunity, both with Amendment 4 and flipping a seat for the U.S. Senate. Now, there's no question, we know the majority of Americans and the majority of Floridians, of course, don't believe in having this abortion ban y'all are having to live under. Of course, believe that these decisions should be between a woman and her doctor. The question is, can we get to this very high threshold of 60% here in Florida? I live in Ohio. We got that 57%. I'm asking y'all to outdo us. We have got to get to that 60. We're really close. So that's one of the reasons why we're here. Then there's this whole other thing happening in Florida that's completely linked, and we need to make sure that everyone sees these things as linked as we do, and that is the Senate race. We have got to elect Debbie McCarcel-Powell. Now, of course, it all makes sense to us that we've got to vote yes for Amendment 4, yes to reproductive freedom. And then, of course, to be consistent here and make sure that we don't have Rick Scott come in and sponsor a national abortion ban in the U.S. Senate. He's already done it, so we know he will. So that is why we don't want to cancel out our votes for Amendment 4 by going and supporting Rick Scott. And y'all are going to make sure that everyone who's voting for Amendment 4 understands the assignment, and that is to vote yes on 4 and yes for DMP. Okay, so we've just got, election day is less than 48 hours away. I know, right? Woo! Huh! But But what an opportunity. We are giving you the messaging, the tools, the information, everything you need. Those of you who came in on buses, can I hear it for, I think we had a Tampa bus. We had Jacksonville. I believe we had Naples. Fort Myers. And Fort Lauderdale. I know there was Vero Beach and Boca. And so incredible for y'all to come all this way to spend time with us and to not just be here for some really amazing conversation with someone who is a hero to all of us, but to take action. And when we do it together, not only do we have a bigger impact because we're acting collectively, but we just get to dig deep together and do a little bit more. I know that for myself, sure, I can sit in my house on my own and, got my kids running around and I'll take a few actions here and there. But when I am with a group of badass women, there is nothing I can't do. So that's why we're here and that's what we're going to do. Okay. All right, so a really key piece of making sure that we get both of these things done in Florida is making sure that every woman in this state has good information about what's on this ballot. Who better to educate all of us, all women of Florida, and frankly, women all across the United States than Heather Cox Richardson.
Waving your banner all over the place.
I like this for your walkout song.
So you guys have to know, I've been on the road, as you know, for 13 months. I started on September 24th of last year, crossing the country to talk about democracy. And to say I am tired does not begin to cut it. But this is my last in-person event for that entire 14 months. And I am so thrilled to be here because this is it. This is what we have done in this country, is all those of us who thought that politics was for somebody else and that we didn't really have the agency to change the country, over the last 8 years have discovered that that formula was backward. We are the country, and we're going to make the country that we want going forward.
I'm so excited to be here with you and with all of these beautiful people. Okay, I want to get right into it. So one of the huge questions, not just in Florida, but all across this country has been, we know that up until this year, 7 out of 7 states have passed abortion ballot initiatives saying yes to reproductive freedom, no matter if it's a blue state, a purple state, a red state, no matter what the wording is on the ballot. It's been a yes. We now have 10 states that have reproductive rights on the ballot this year. Florida is one of those 10. The big question is, are we going to continue to see this massive trend in favor of these ballot initiatives? And will there be a connection made by voters that in order to support reproductive freedom in this country, it's not just enough to support these ballot initiatives, that we also need to support candidates who are also going to believe that women and not they as politicians should be in charge of making these personal.
So this is such an important issue, because one of the things that we have seen in this country really since 2007 is, and I could explain why that is the attempt to take away the construction of our laws from people like us and put it into the hands of a small minority. And key to that is control of the Senate. So because of the fact the Senate is the group that confirms the federal judges, and because of the fact the Senate is the place where laws go to die under the aegis of people like Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky. So when you talk about these abortion rights initiatives that are being passed everywhere, One of the key things you see, I think, in the present is the anti-abortion movement constructed the idea of abortion as being a form of birth control, which was always a myth on their part. But what we have seen since we saw the overturning of Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health a little more than 2 years ago was that the pro-choice people were right all along. It's healthcare. And as we see people who desperately want to start families or who have very much wanted pregnancies die because they can't get health care, that's something that is a public health problem, and it is not some, radical left women's issue. It is an issue of the people we love dying. And these initiatives across the states, the people who are trying to enshrine the right to health care and to abortion health care in their constitutions are indicating the way people really feel. But if the radical right can continue to hold the Senate, they are going to be able to, certainly if they get both houses, to be able to pass national abortion laws. But even more than that, if they can continue to hold the Senate, they can confirm judges who will do things like Matthew Kaczmarek has done in Texas, which is to try and get rid of abortion nationally by getting rid of the FDA approval for mifepristone. So, people sometimes feel like, well, I'm used to Rick Scott. He's not going to be that bad, which is not the way I think about it. But it is crucially important here and in other states to recognize that the Senate is where the radical right minority has ensconced its power. And that is so crucial. And that's the message that we're going to have to take out, to change what the Senate looks like and to get him out so that we can make sure we protect human rights here, healthcare rights for Americans.
Do you all feel prepared to carry that message as you talk to people in the next 48 hours? All right.
The Senate really, and you know what, if you have any doubt about that, look at the extraordinary push. If there has been one place that the radical right has put money in this election, it's into Senate races. They have poured money into the Senate races. Not so much here in Florida, because they, I hope incorrectly, believe that Rick Scott has a lock on it. The numbers suggest he does not. But if you look at the money that flowed into, right now the Ohio Senate race is the most expensive Senate race in American history.
Yeah. It's not been fun there with all the negative ads that pays for. Now, speaking of ads, I think we all typically cannot stand political ads. However, I think that the ads for Amendment 4 in Florida have done a really amazing job simply providing a platform for women who have nearly lost their lives in pursuit of reproductive health care. And under the laws of Florida and DeSantis have nearly died as a result, right? And so now, of course, we see DeSantis coming in and trying to use every lever, including legal ones, to try to get these women telling their stories off the air. But what is going on here with the state really attempting to limit speech and just women sharing their personal stories? What does that tell you about where we are?
So that's a really interesting thing, that there is an attempt on the part of the state to stop free speech. So the First Amendment, you often hear people say, well, I can say whatever I want. And it's like, not in my living room, you can't. Because what the First Amendment does is it stops the government from policing what we say. And that's really important. But in Florida, I'm sure many of you will be shocked to hear this, but Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has really pioneered a number of the things that are in Project 2025. And he has done so very deliberately by patterning them on the same laws that Viktor Orban put in place in Hungary when he destroyed democracy there. And, we're those of us in other states are very, very aware that you were on the front lines, and by God, we're cheering you on. But for DeSantis to use the power of the state and the law to try and stifle what citizens of the state of Florida can say in order to change the way that the laws of the state read is is really a major hallmark of the way that authoritarians take and achieve power. You know, you can look at Viktor Orban. I mean, he has elections, but he doesn't let the media say anything he doesn't want it to. So, in fact, he always gets elected. That is exactly what Ron DeSantis is trying to do here in Florida. And if you think about reproductive care, which is so fundamental to human rights and to the advances that women have made in American society, that's extraordinarily important. But if you look at the fact he is trying to stop Floridians from talking about politics, oh boy, that's a whole factory of red flags. And he would not be doing it if he didn't recognize that the weight of popular opinion is strongly against him.
So Ron DeSantis, of course, is not on the ballot right now, but Rick Scott is for Senate. And there are few politicians in office, I think, that are more closely tied with Project 2025.
That's right.
And so we, again, have to be able to make sure that people can understand the threat. It's not like a balancing thing, like, well, let's pass Amendment 4 and then balance that out somehow with a politician. Can you, again, just help equip us to go out there understanding the stakes of this Senate race, given that it's Rick Scott who is so closely tied to Project 2025?
So one of the things that I like to point out to people is this is not a partisan election in 2024, which may sound like a surprise, but what we really are doing is putting together a coalition of people who believe in democracy to oppose a very small minority that does not, but that has locked up key positions of power. So the people who are voting against the top of the ticket, against Donald Trump, do not even start me, are Democrats for sure, but also a lot of Republicans, real Republicans, and a lot of independents as well. So the reason I set it up that way is because it's important to remember that right now there is a huge fight in the Republican Party between the MAGAs, whom Donald Trump has empowered and who have key places in the MAGA universe, and Ron DeSantis is one of them, and those Republicans who would like to take the party back to something before Donald Trump. And that's actually a really interesting dynamic. But one of the things that's really important here in Florida is Rick Scott is in line to be the MAGA leader of the Senate. He is trying, Mitch McConnell has announced he is stepping down in November, and there's a fight to replace him. And there are 3 candidates in the race to replace him. And this really matters because the person who's in charge of the Senate determines what's on the Senate calendar. So even if there's something extraordinarily popular, like, for example, common sense gun safety legislation, the person who's in charge of the Senate can stop it from ever coming up for discussion. It's a very powerful position, and that's the way Mitch McConnell used it. That's what Rick Scott is in for. He is trying to get that position. If Rick Scott gets that position, you can kiss goodbye everything that you are hoping, and that the vast majority of Americans is hoping will happen. It will have the effect of putting a MAGA Republican who is deeply tied to Project 2025, which is not only the attempt to destroy the U.S. government as we know it, including the Department of Education, taking all of the nonpartisan civil servants and making them loyal to the president, making the military loyal to the president, making the Department of Justice loyal to the president. In addition to deconstructing the modern American state, it also calls for putting in place an autocrat who will impose Christian nationalism on the country, rather as DeSantis has done here in Florida. So this race, Rick Scott is more than just a generic R versus a D. It is a question of empowering Project 2025 and the MAGA Republicans across this entire nation. And even for people who see themselves as Republicans, believe they will always be Republicans, unless they are MAGA, they do not want Rick Scott. And that's something important to remember. This is not a Republican like your mom's Republican. This is a radical extremist who is trying to destroy American democracy. And that's what's on the table in this election, especially here in Florida with Rick Scott.
So what I'm hearing is the stakes could not be higher when it comes to this Senate race. And I just want to get real here for a second. Okay, Debbie McCarcel Powell, who's an incredibly qualified, talented candidate. I believe she is among the competitive Senate races where we have a chance to flip. She's the only woman candidate running in that position right now. And we have not seen a great deal of national investment or national attention on her and this race, yet she's within the margin of error, right? I mean, she's running at like 48%. This could go either way on election day. So we have Project 2025, Rick Scott posing a huge threat to Florida and the whole country, and then you have Debbie McChrystal-Powell totally equipped to not only fend off that threat, but rightly represent the majority views of Americans and Floridians. Why are we seeing this lack of investment? And you know how I feel about women getting together to support a woman. So what opportunity, do you see here?
So one of the things that's really interesting about states that have been super gerrymandered, and you see the same thing really dramatically right now in North Carolina, but you're certainly seeing it here in this Senate race, is that when it looks as if you've become a one-party state, the candidates on the party that's in power tend to get, I always say, fat and lazy, and in some cases corrupt, because there's no oversight. They just know they're going to get elected and they don't bother to do their work. And we always focus on them. But what, again, structurally always happens is that the people who are running uphill, if you will, are terrific, are just terrific. And they often don't get the attention that they otherwise might because people think that the race is going to be sewn up. But 2024 is a really different election, a really different election than we have ever seen in the United States, with maybe a possible exception I can think of. But this one is brand new in a really profound way. And that is that after 40 years of women really being relegated back to their roles in what I've talked about as the cowboy image, the cowboy image, the idea that women are supposed to be wives and mothers or sex workers. Women are, think about it really, right? Women have recognized since the rise of Donald Trump that we have reached the end of that story. When Donald Trump in the Access Hollywood tape talked about how he could sexually assault women because he was a star and denigrated women, and of course minorities as well, I think his inauguration was a really big deal. But what was a bigger deal is what happened the next day, the Women's March. And ever since then, when people at the time were like, oh, cool, Women's March, biggest one march in human history, still. But I don't think what they expected to happen did. They expected that it would end. And what really happened was that women like us started talking to other women and started to organize and started to work off the radar screen to create new communities of people, not trying to push a radical agenda the way people on the right will say, but rather trying to reclaim the concept of the American community, of a government that does the best for all of us, not for one group of people or another group of people. And in this particular election, I think that's what you're seeing. I think you're seeing it from the top of the ticket all the way down. But what is really struck me in the media coverage of 2024 is that these organizations are not showing up in the legacy media. They are not showing up. And I don't think that they are showing up in the polling either, because we, especially speaking as an older woman, tend to be invisible. And that, I think, is what makes this particular election going to be an extraordinary game changer, because women are stepping up to take their rightful roles in American politics. But they are doing so with extraordinary grassroots organizing, volunteering, working together as groups, getting out and talking to people. And again, one of the things you see at the top of the ticket, one of the problems that former President Donald Trump and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, who are the Republican candidates, are having, is they don't have anybody to knock on the doors. Well, why don't they have anybody to knock on the doors? Because they're all over here knocking on the doors. And that, I think, is going to make this election a real game changer. And when you say that Debbie is, within the margin of error, what they are not factoring in is those of us out here knocking on the doors. We absolutely can do this. And the way that you do it is you talk to people, relational organizing, Use the rally tool. Talk to your friends. Say what I just said about Rick Scott, who will lead this country if, in fact, the Republicans get a majority in the Senate. He would take the country down the path of Project 2025. And on the other hand, you have this extraordinary candidate who says, I believe in freedom. I believe that families should make their own decisions about their health care, and that we should protect this community, which I think is the wave of the future.
You all have a lot of power here.
No, we don't have a lot of power. We have all the power.
Hey!
And that's why they're so scared. You know, that is, you probably are not glued to social media the way I am. Yesterday was a complete freak out. It was a freak out on the side of the radical right. At one point, somebody actually posted to one of the people freaking out, hey, dude, you maybe should get some help. I mean, it was that bad. And, you know, they're not doing that because they think they're winning. They're doing it because this is a turnout election. If people turn out to vote, it is a blue wave across the entire country. But we got to get people out. And we know that the late-breaking voters are breaking heavily for the Democrats, and we know that the reason that what is still at stake here is, are those people going to turn out to vote? Are they going to get their little feet moving to the polling places? And that's what we can do. We can get them to the polling places. And if we get them to the polling places, they will overwhelmingly vote for Debbie, vote for protecting reproductive rights, and vote for creating, as I say, this national community.
There is, so that's what we're doing. We're getting them to the polls. I think something really critical for us all to keep in mind in these next 48 hours and through Election Day as we do this work.
Is it really 48? Wait,
Sunday, Monday. Tuesday.
Oh, at the beginning is 48. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
God, it just crept up on us, didn't it?
I mean, what is time? What is any day right now? So I might have had it right. I might have had it wrong. Okay. It's coming up.
Creeps in its petty pace from day to day.
What I have seen, and I think this is what you said is so important about how this actually isn't a partisan election. And I really want us to absorb that, because there's a lot of power in that as we do this outreach. You all live in communities across the state that many of which are all kinds of shades of purple and red. And that does not mean that they are not available to you in terms of those folks in those communities for supporting our basic rights and freedoms. And that's what this has to be about. Red, White, and Blue worked very closely on Prop 3 to pass reproductive freedom in Michigan in 2022, in Ohio in 2023. And these were coalitions of Democrats, Republicans, and independents who passed this, who cared about freedom. And so what I hope we can all leave here today knowing and really feeling like we've got our marching orders and can do together is to carry that flag, that this is an election about democracy, about freedom. They're the ones trying to make this be a partisan thing and try to rally up some base and bring all that ugliness. We're just trying to live out our American values here.
And that's exactly right. You know, I actually don't, I am here for the proposition, which is, well, I'm here for you. But I'm here for the proposition. I'm also here for the Senate race, but I don't know any of the people involved. And I was just doing something similar in Ohio, and I said then quite literally, I know Sherrod Brown on paper. I've never met him, but I'm actually not here for him, and I'm not actually here for Debbie McCarcel-Powell. I'm here for Abraham Lincoln, and everything that I am doing is about maintaining American democracy. And that is something that is absolutely a nonpartisan issue. And a number of people who might think they are Republicans think they are Eisenhower Republicans or even George H.W. Bush Republicans, and recognize that in this moment, that party has been driven off a cliff by an autocrat, and people who want to use him to empower themselves to do whatever they want to do with that power. Usually it's money, but sometimes it's just power. That's not the American democracy that I honor. I honor the one that we see here, where all of us are like, damn, we live in a great country. We live in a country that is attempting to figure out how to pull 332 million people of all races and genders and ethnicities and religions together into a government that is delivering the best for the most of us. And that is an aspiration that is what created this country. It's an aspiration for which people are still at this very moment dying around the world. And at the end of the day, it is the fundamental aspirations of humans to have a say in their future, to get to determine the world in which they live. And, you know, our moment will pass, but the dreams of human self-determination as they are embodied in democracy, if I have any say in it, and I think if you have any say in it, those are going to continue into eternity. And that's why I'm here, and I think why we're going to be out knocking doors.
You always make me feel so damn helpful and hopeful, and I just love you for that. Okay, other people who make me feel so hopeful are the women across the state who are leading this grassroots movement. And what's been so incredible to me is that, you know, Red, Wine, and Blue has Trouble Nation, you know. So this group, this is almost 500 grassroots groups all across the country who are organizing in your communities, because that is where it matters, is at the community level, person to person. And so of course, we were involved in Florida, but we didn't have any full-time staff here on the ground. But when we saw what was going on down here and the energy, I mean, you are some of our most active groups across the whole country. I mean, you all have it. So when we saw the opportunity to get involved, you know, I said to our team, well, I mean, let's see what we can put together in a few weeks. 14 events, 600 of you here right now on a very short notice. And so I would love to bring up Missy McGinnis, who leads our Trouble Nation program.
A little fan club back there. Hi, everyone. Katie set it up really well. I'm Missy McGinnis, and less than 14 months ago, Red, Wine, and Blue launched Trouble Nation, which is our national grassroots organizing program that's aimed to help local grassroots groups across the country get started and existing grassroots groups grow and strengthen. And we grew very steadily and nicely until the middle of July last summer, or this past summer. And then we had an amazing virtual event with Heather that pretty much broke the internet. We had more than, which was incredible. We had more than 40,000 people joined the Zoom, and then countless tens of thousands others watched streaming and then watched the recording. And after that, so we were at somewhere around 200 or so groups, which we were really, really proud of because it shows the power of grassroots organizing. And then almost overnight, the program exploded and tripled practically overnight. And what I'm thrilled to say is that many of those groups that joined that night are from Florida. And we are pleased to welcome two of the leaders of those groups that started right then tonight. So Dawn Wazinski and Trisha Stoddard, if you could come over to the side, you'll grab your microphones. We're gonna ask, woohoo!
Yeah, do you want to, you come and sit next to Missy. I think that'll be, here, you come down here.
And can I just introduce where they're from?
Yes, of course.
So Trisha Stoddard is from Vero Beach, and she started, the group called Grace, Hope, and Freedom. And Dawn Wazinski started the group, a group in Fort Myers with two other leaders who are here today, called, this is awesome, Southwest Florida Hurricanes, H-E-R.
And coming on strong.
And not to forget the men, so and man-a-tees. So that's a fun name.
We're taking democracy by storm.
Yes! So I'll ask the first question. So both of you started your groups, as I mentioned, right after the event with Heather last summer. What compelled you to start those groups? What compelled you to start those groups then after that event? Dawn, you want to start?
Well, watching your podcast on talking about Project 2025, and I hadn't heard about it. I've never been very political other than voting and kind of watching things. I downloaded Project 2025 and I read it and I was freaked out. And so I started right away with the hurricane group, started the group, and my neighbor, who I didn't know at the time, was also on that that Zoom call, and she joined with me, and we took Project 2025 and narrowed it down to one-page summaries, and we went out and talked about it in our community. And so, and it was scary in our community because it's very, very red. And the last little walked around like, are you a Democrat? People are coming up to us because we put our faces out there now and feel safe talking to us, and surprised by many of who are with us. So that's how we got started, thanks to you. And I read you every night, and believe it or not, you don't freak me out. You make me feel like we're moving.
Good.
Tricia?
I have been following Heather Cox Richardson since 2017. I have every one of her books, and I have been screaming, literally, from the rooftop about Project 2025 back before it became a well-known thing. I grew up in the Midwest at a time when Roe v. Wade was the talk of the day, and Ronald Reagan told all of us, it's the law of the land, live with it. And I went on to develop my career, have a family, and I just never thought this could happen here. In 2017, when Trump happened here, I had to find out, how did this happen? Has this ever happened here before? And that's how I found the wonderful Dr. Richardson. And I really wanted to go to college and take her class.
Great idea.
We all do.
So I have been waking up with Dr. Richardson every morning before I say good morning to my husband.
And same? Yeah, raise your hand if that's you.
And I found Red, Wine, and Blue through the virtual, broke the internet, and I was unhappy to get kicked off of it, but but that's all right.
Over capacity then.
Yes, you were, but that's okay. I watched it afterwards anyway, a couple of times, and but I had to do something. All of my adult life, even though when I was 18 years old and they hadn't passed the Equal Rights Amendment, they wouldn't ratify it. And my father actually said, why don't you sign up for the military? And I looked at him and I said, until this country passes, every state ratifies the ERA, I am not signing up for the draft. I am not signing up for selective service until I'm recognized as an equal. And in 2019, when it came up again and they let it expire because our illustrious MAGA said it's silly and it's dangerous. So us having equal rights is silly and dangerous. This is not the country that we know. This is not the country that my husband fought in the Vietnam War for. This is not the country that all of my relatives fought in World War II for. And I need to do something. I cannot believe that this can happen here, but it's happening. And I have been watching and documenting and reading and following every step that has been instituted and put underway of Project 2025. I just about had a heart attack, which I can't afford to have one more, when they overturned the Chevron doctrine. And everybody says, even my brilliant son, said, who's a history major, said, oh, Mom, it can't happen here. And I said, it's happened. It is happening. So I found out about red, wine, and blue because you broke the internet. I said, I've got to get organized. And these women in Vero, they are my heroes. They are so well organized. And we are building a coalition. We are rebuilding this democracy that we all love, and we're doing it one vote at a time. There is no vote that isn't important, and the best votes are the informed votes, and that's what we have, Dr.
That's
Richardson.
right.
Okay.
Okay, I love how you said you didn't even know your neighbor before, and now you're co-conspirators doing this work for democracy. I hear that, oh my gosh, you all must have been best friends since college. They go, her? I met her last month. We're just organizing together, and it forms these deep bonds. And I would just love to hear more from you all, especially in places where in the past you'd felt sort of shy and feeling isolated and alone. And there's nothing worse than that. And the antidote to that always is community and connection. And you all are doing that. So how did you sort of make yourselves known? How did you fly your flag a little bit, just in those early days, to start to grow your group? Because you both have seen real growth.
We were doing candidate days or nights at people's houses, and Nancy and I would go and talk about it, talk about Project 2025 and about, we read about it, and do you know, it's in our state. It is in our state. And they'd be like, what? And we'd explain it to them, and we'd hand out these papers that we put together, and they were so appalled and shocked and ready for it, they started writing us and asking, please send it to me. I want to pass it on. So that's what we were doing, is spreading the word carefully in our community, and preaching to the choir, because every time we got together, it was the same people, but we were actionable. And Nancy and I, my friend Nancy is my co-conspirator, and Monica. That's the three of us make the Hurricanes. We just needed to get out and spread the word and be active, not just say, oh, go write a postcard or do, which matters, but learn how to talk to your friends, which Red, Wine, and Blue has a great video on how to talk to people and how to engage without being mean, or, when they get mean, bye, I don't have time. Work on the people you need to work on. So through Red, Wine, and Blue, I've gotten a lot of tools that I've put into play and Nancy's put into play, and we've taught people in our neighborhood to put into play. And like I said, we can walk down the street or go play pickleball, and they're like, can I talk to you? And it's like, you can. So that's really big to me, that we have made that they feel safe to talk to us. And then also that we have to feel not safe to talk about our politics. That's because we've lost our democracy, and we got to get it back.
I just want to ask, Heather, what's it like for you to hear these stories of women who are reading you literally each morning before they even speak to their husbands?
Okay, so
they're co-conspirators with each other.
Interesting for me. But what I'm hearing is in my mind, I'm always writing in my head. And what I'm hearing is, and I don't like to predict the future, but what I am hearing is many people are not aware that the movement that became the radical right that we have today started exactly this way. It started primarily in Arizona, but in a number of the southwestern Sunbelt states, where women started talking to each other about how they didn't like the government and so on. And there was lots of racism and things thrown into all that. But I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, okay, it's, as I say, not on the legacy media's radar screen, but I truly believe that we are looking at a sea change in the American government and in American democracy, and it is starting right here with people like this saying, you know what, I don't like this, and I'm going to find a friend to talk to about it, and discovering that there are a lot of people, and pretty soon you're winning school board races, and pretty soon you're winning state house races, and pretty soon you're winning the Congress, and pretty soon you're winning the White House, and pretty soon we have an American democracy that is everything that it should be and never has been. So to me, this is like, you said to me earlier, this is me. It is not me. I have the words that people are thinking. It's you, people on the ground, doing the work, that are going to have volume after volume after volume of history books written about you. And I just think that's so freaking cool.
I'd like to add that it doesn't end on Tuesday. We got to keep going in January, and we're going to be ready. I've only been doing this 3 months. It's not over. We've got a ways to go, and we can do it. We just started, and look at you. You're here.
Yes. Okay. All right. Speaking of women stepping up and winning school board races, there's a couple women here. Renee. Oh, Renee's next. What would I do without this team? Keeping me on track. Thank you. Okay. All right. So we heard Heather talk about how important it is to be having these conversations with the people that we know. And so we are, and she even mentioned Rally, the tool that Red, Wine, and Blue uses. And by the time you get out of here, if you're not already using it today, these next 48 hours are going to be so essential, because this tool is going to empower you to know who has and who hasn't voted yet. And so you can be very strategic in how you spend your time with these conversations. So I am going to invite Renee Seckel, who leads the Trouble Nation team alongside Missy, to come up and talk about that program, because we are here to talk, and we are also here to work.
Okay, you're good. Hi. Hi. All right, first thing I want you to do is, if you have already voted, please raise your hand. Probably I shouldn't scream into the mic. If you are one of the 3 people in the room who didn't raise your hand, do you have a plan to vote? I'm not going to make you raise your hand. Now, raise your hand if you are 100% certain that every single person that you know who is even a tiny bit like-minded to you has voted. Okay, that's some of you. So maybe you can take a nap or think of some people you don't know yet. All right? But for the rest of you, we just heard Heather say this is a turnout election. And so what we have at Red, Wine, and Blue is a tool to help you turn folks out. And while Heather, but we have the you can't from your couch. And it's based in the concept of relational organizing. Now, Heather mentioned relational. And what that means, it's the simple fact that when you call your friends, they're going to pick up. How many of you pick up the phone when it's survey or unknown number? Or my very favorite, I have gotten scam text. I don't pick up. Do you? No. But your friends pick up, right? Yeah. So we know, I'm looking at this slide over here, we know that when you talk to your friends, they listen. When you tell them, this issue matters to me, this candidate matters to me, they listen. So each and every one of you is incredibly powerful. So we're going to harness that power. May I have the next slide, please? So this is how powerful relational organizing is. In 2013, I just time traveled. In 2023, we use this program and we increased voter turnout 10%. Now, I hear tell that's a big number. Katie says that's a big number. I'm like, yeah, sure, okay.
Presidential campaigns pay hundreds of millions of dollars to try to get a 1% increase.
So, but I'm not satisfied with 10%. I want each one of you to have all of your friends turn out 100%. We can do that, right? All right, so, slide please. Right now, we are 2 days before voting, basically. You've got the rest of today to get your friends to early vote. So, bus people, I'm looking at you. And we've got Tuesday. So you're going to be talking to anybody you know that you're pretty sure is on our side. Do not call Uncle MAGA. He is a project for later, right? You're going to call or text or talk to anybody who is on our side, but you're not sure if they know about Amendment 4, if they know about Debbie McCarcel-Powell's race or any of that. And you're going to get in touch with them. May I have the next slide, please? Ready to go? Okay. So who here is already on Rally? Oh, I love this. Yay. Okay. So let me tell you how cool our tool is. It is a web-based tool, and all of you have information on your seats on how to get into it, but please don't use it yet because I want you listening to me. So in our tool, you enter, you join, you look yourself up in the voter file. It's all public information. And then you start entering your friends. We're asking you to take responsibility for 10 to 12 of your friends, at least 10 to 12. And you start by putting them in, you put in their name, you put in their rough age and the town they live in, and you look them up in the voter file. The first thing you're going to see, have they already voted? If they have, you're like, woo, I win. And you move on to the next person. But if they haven't, you know you need to reach out to them. So powerful is we have this matched up. There might be a day's delay for early voting, but we know you're going to see who's voted, which is nice. And then all of the information that you need to give them, that they need to go vote, is right there at your fingertips. Because, can you put the next slide up, please? We'll talk about that in a minute. Next slide, please. Okay. So the first thing you're going to see, and so you pull up your friend, you click on, I'm going to talk to my husband, Rob. And it says, help Rob make a plan to vote. You click into that and it'll say, how is Rob voting? Now, right now, if you're doing this today, you could get an early vote plan. But more likely, you're going to be saying on election day, and you click next, and it pops up their voting location and the hours. And there's a little box in the corner, and you click on that, you copy that information, and you can send it to them immediately using a text or WhatsApp or Messenger, however you communicate. But it's right there. You don't have to look anything up. They don't have to look anything up. You can just give it to them. And this works if you have friends in Florida, of course, but all across the country. It's amazing. So then, in addition, if you have friends you think need a little persuading to vote, we don't have a lot of time, but try it. We also have Florida-specific information. We have information about Project 2025, about this race, about Amendment 4 right in there, and it's the same thing. You just click to copy it, and you can send that information to your friends. Does that sound awesome? All right, so who's ready to give it a try? Okay, may I have the next one, please? Oh, yeah, that's the customized voting plans. I always skip ahead. So the first thing you're going to do, every single one of you on your seat was given a handout with a QR code, so you can either use that QR code to get to Rally or post it around the room. You can text the word Rally to 85868? 59868, great. 59868. They are posted around the room, so you can see those. Don't listen to me. You're going to get into Rally. And again, next slide, please. Oh, yeah, this is also the cool thing. When you go in, once you're in the Rally tool, there's a tab that says Impact, and you can literally see, like this morning I checked, I have 40 contacts in, and 27 of them have voted. And I get to see that every morning I click in and go, who voted today? You know. So you can see that impact, which is really important. Next slide, please. All right, there's your text Rally. This is me vamping, so you all have time to do it. Y'all getting there?
Get those phones out, y'all. Come on.
Give me a high sign.
600 people here. Do you know how many votes is that we could impact just in this room?
Yeah.
This is your power. Let's not just talk about it. Let's exercise that power.
Yep. So either use the QR code, which again, you each got one on your seat, or text Rally to 859-868. I know, I'm sorry, numbers are not my thing. All right, just give me a high sign when you're pretty much ready for me to move on. All right, I'm going to give it another second.
I
feel like I should be doing an intro.
So this is like where I have all my contacts in, and I can see who has voted here. And then otherwise, I can go in.
All right, how's this side of the room doing? You guys are good? Middle? How are we doing over here?
I know she's gonna go.
We're doing good?
Election day.
This side of the room? All right. So we're moving on to the next thing. May I have the next slide, please? All right. You sign in, you just give them your email address, and then it's going to send you a link. So when you will never have to use a password for this site. It will remember you for a while, but then the next time you need to log in, it just says, we're going to send you a link. And you go to your email, you grab it, you click the link, you're in. This might take a minute. So I'm going to move on because while you're waiting for your links, we're going to tell you how to get in. Next slide, please. So once you get in, you set up, when you go to the page, you're going to join, you'll see 5 states and then all other states. You're joining all other states because you're not one of the other 4 states. You're going to set up your profile, and just like you do for your friends, you put in your name, the town where you live, and your age. You don't have to do a rough age because I assume you all know how old you are. And then you click yes, and it will match you to the voter file. Next slide, please. Oh, and it will pop up, is this you? And you either say, yes, that's me, or no, it's not. If you can't find yourself, but you've already voted, you're good. Don't worry about it. Just say none of these and move on. You can still use Rally. And now you do the same thing with your list. You go to enter contacts, and you build your list. Now, how many of you are sitting here going, Renee, I don't know 10 people. Who are you kidding? Okay, you're all social. That's awesome. All right, so you might not need it, but we do have this very cool brainstorming tool, which if you are like me and you first heard about it, we're like, I don't know 10 people. It gives you ideas of who you might think to talk to. But you all don't need that. That's amazing. So you just get started adding contacts. You put in their legal name. So if you have a friend who's Peggy, ask if she's Margaret, and where they live and a rough estimate of their age. They will not know how old you said they were. Don't worry. And it will look them up in the voter file and give you a list. And once again, you will find them. Can you move the slides, please? Thank you. See, that's what it looks like. Once they're matched, you can pop up a list of the actions that you can take with regard to that person. Now, because we are right before Election Day, the first one you're going to be doing is helping your friends make a plan to vote. Because right now you're reaching out to the people you're pretty sure believe the way that you do, right? So that's your most important tool. Go in, find your friend, help them make a plan to vote, get that information on their polling place with the hours, and you send it to them. Okay? Is there anybody who's gotten their link and is in Rally right now? Woo, that's awesome. All right. So put one person in. Try to make it somebody you don't know has already voted, because that's cheating. Because I would put my husband in, but he's already voted. And that's all you got to do. And you just keep doing that. Every time you get worried, send a Rally text to somebody. Every time somebody says something that makes you angry, sit down and add 2 more contacts. And you've got 2 days to do this. And if every single person in this room gets 12 people out to vote, or makes sure those people get out to vote, we can have a huge impact. And there are women doing this all over the country. And together we can literally change the country, which is amazing. Does anybody have, I don't think I have time for questions, but if you have questions, come find me after and I will try to help you. Thank you all for being so patient with me, and go forth and rally.
Thank you, Renee. And yeah, so any member of our team in a red, white, and blue shirt, or lots of the Grassroots leaders who are here tonight, but raise your hand if you're someone who knows Rally and can help. Look around, especially behind you, these women over here. We all want to help. We all want to help you with this. So don't let, something moving a little slow on the site or anything like that deter you, or you're not sure where to click. We didn't know where to click at first either. So let's help each other out. let's make an impact. Seriously, with the number of people here and the commitment that you all have, we've all seen how these elections in Florida can come down to a handful of votes. Right. So why don't we just take care of it right now? You know what I mean? Just like, let's just win the whole thing right now. Okay, so.
Well, and don't forget you have friends in other states as well.
Yep.
Which is, you know, especially Pennsylvania right now, people are real nervous. Ohio, the swing states. And, you know, I'm just sitting here, I don't know about you, when I love the rally tool, but when she said put in your contacts, I'm like, I don't know a single person. Like your mind goes blank. And then you sit there and think, well, wait a minute. You know, I know people in Nevada. I know people in Pennsylvania. I know people in Florida.
Yeah.
So
sometimes I'll just go and start looking through my contacts, you know, and I'll go, oh, okay. And I'm going to look her up. And once you start looking, you get to see if they voted in the last few elections. You get to see all kinds of stuff in there. So it's pretty fun. Okay. So speaking of winning elections, I want to bring up two women who know how to do that and who have been just kicking ass in their own communities in Florida. So Stephanie Vanos and Jennifer Jenkins are going to join us right now. Okay, these are just examples of these are my heroes right here, okay? This is the best of us. Stephanie Vanos and Jennifer Jenkins both have run against Moms for Liberty candidates. And yeah, they both won. So, okay, so Jennifer, you ran against one of the women who is actually a founder of Moms for Liberty. Is it Tina Desovich? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. She was one of the two women, I guess, who started, there's a few of them, who started Moms for Liberty here in Florida. And Jennifer, what gave you the idea, that, I'm going to run in this school board race and, in an area where you might not have necessarily felt like it was going to be the friendliest territory, like, gumption, girl, tell us, and where do we get it,
Yeah, so I live in Brevard County, which is deep red county for all of you that are aware. Yes. I like to tell people that we are the Space Coast where we launch human beings into space. We also launch the most per capita January 6th Irrectionists and Moms for Liberty. It's a really cool.
Okay.
Really cool thing to brag about. I am an educator. My husband is a teacher, and I decided to run for school board in 2020 because I was sick and tired of getting paid $39,000 a year with a master's degree. And quite frankly, at the time, Ms. Desovich was already seated on the board, and she was advocating for arming our teachers. And so that gave me two reasons to run for office. I was deeply out-registered as a outed Democrat in Brevard County, but that year, Donald Trump won by 17 points in Brevard, and I defeated that Republican incumbent by 10 points. And then, unfortunately, she didn't take that loss nicely and went on to found Moms for Liberty. So I'm really sorry about that, but we'll talk about that later.
Well, it hasn't been working out so well for them, actually, all across this country. And fortunately, I think you represent how most women moms feel all across the country. And so I would say that you have actually inspired more women than that outfit. So. All right, Stephanie, you just had your race going up against a candidate who is also affiliated with Moms for Liberty, and that was just this past August. So let us in. What's the story there?
Yeah, my background is in advocacy, public education advocacy, and I really never thought I would run for office. I'm an introvert. But I saw what was happening, and I saw what was at stake in public education, and I saw the kinds of people who were being elected, and I thought, well, man, if they can do it, like, I actually know something, like, I could do this too. And I just found that our community was really hungry for just I'm a normal, boring mom. Like, our community was just hungry for knowledgeable, rational people to be on our school board. And that's really what I ran on. And I ran a positive campaign focused on, the good things that public education is doing. And yeah, we can always improve it. But public education is a public good. And I think that really there's so much that we have in common. And I really tried to build on that commonality.
Jennifer, your race got some national attention for some reasons that I think were hard on you and your family and your life. Some pretty terrible tactics they tried to use against you, and that has become, a feature of what we've seen in right-wing politics. How did you kind of go through all that and somehow manage to keep the focus in your race on? We're told, well, campaigns use these negative tactics because they work. But that wasn't the case, I think, for either of you. How did you keep that focus on what people actually care about?
Yeah, I unfortunately have an incredibly unique experience. Shortly after I won, members of Moms for Liberty started showing up in my school board meetings. I would call them Moms Against Jennifer Jenkins because it was an intentional, planned intimidation and harassment campaign that went on for the next 2 years of my life, every single day. It was also the Republican Party of Florida. Just a quick list of some of the things that happened. I was kicked out of a Ron DeSantis press conference that night. The second protest in front of my home showed up. They vandalized my property. They followed me with private investigators. They went through my trash. They made a false website saying I was having an affair and disseminated it hundreds and hundreds of times. I was publicly called a whore by state representatives. A Jezebel, mentally ill, a child abuser, a pedophile, that's their favorite one. They claimed that I was abusing my daughter, and they made a false ECF claim where I had to take an investigator to my 5-year-old daughter's playdate to look underneath her clothes to see if I was abusing her. It was relentless and constant, and the point of it was truthfully, the political party had aligned with my belief system, were inspired by my run, and were coming alongside me in conviction and integrity.
Yes, let's stand up for that. I love that.
Thank you. I knew all along that the point of that was to get me to quit, to get me to back down. And I'm not going to lie to you, I cried every single day, multiple times a day. I threatened to my husband every day that I was going to quit. But I couldn't, because what I had witnessed inside of that boardroom and in my community that was very segregated. The African-American community was segregated from the LGBTQ community. And at this time, this is when those public education culture wars had just really begun. It began in Brevard County before anywhere else in the state. And then, of course, unfortunately, it traveled across the nation. And I had seen each group stand up and come to these board meetings to stand up for themselves and people who look and think like themselves. But then I started to watch them come together just through my voice and standing there and being a part and bringing them together. And I couldn't walk away from that. I knew I couldn't walk away from that. And I knew that I didn't want to one day look at my daughter when she got older and heard these stories and look at her and say that mommy gave up and mommy let the mean guys win. And so, or the mean ladies. And so that's why I continued on. But I appreciate all of you for standing up for me there, because truly they were so terrified of me that they redistricted me out of my seat. And so I'm actually done with my term in 2 weeks because of that. And thank you.
Oh, she's not finished.
I'm not finished.
Yeah. So Stephanie, having seen, experiences like Jennifer's, you decided, I'm going to run for school board, and you had one of these Moms for Liberty candidates run against you. As Jennifer indicated, the whole point is to try to make you quit. Honestly, that's the point of all of this. The overwhelm, that's a strategy. The whole point is to hope that we all just get, throw up our hands and say, oh, well, and walk away, which is just then consenting to their agenda. And so that's why it's so important and why it's so inspiring and why, of course, we get on our feet when we hear about somebody so defiantly refusing to do just that. And so, Stephanie, you know, I think that sometimes I have worried that other women would look at experiences like Jennifer's and go, I'm not running for office. I'm not getting involved in any of that. But yet you did.
Yeah, and I think a big well, first of all, when people say, why did you decide to run for school board of all offices? And I would joke and say, because I hate myself. But really, it was people like Jennifer. You know, in my in the advocacy work that I did with my partner, advocacy partner, and my campaign manager, who's here, Scott. You know, we spent 2022 and 2023 traveling the state. I think we visited 20 counties out of 67. Personally, we're there on the ground, talking to school board candidates, talking to school board members, going to school board meetings, and you know, I think Jennifer was a huge inspiration to me because I thought, well, if she can do this in Ruby Red Brevard County, where she's constantly being attacked and just the worst, most personal ways, I can do this in Orange County. And I was just so fortunate to have a really strong community around me, and many of them are in the audience today. But it's because we saw what happened, and we weren't going to let it happen here, and we weren't going to let it happen again. And so I, thank you for being such an inspiration, such a motivation to people like me.
Heather, I'd love for you to just sort of put some of this in context from that national lens. You have been tracking through your letters, these attacks on public education, how it fits into the overall assault on our democracy. And you've seen this trajectory of Moms for Liberty and regular folks standing up. Put these women in their fight in context for us. Just as an aside here, somehow I got on Moms for Liberty's email list. and boy, was that an eye-opener. They've taken me off. So education is, of course, the heartbeat of a democracy, and it has been a project on the part of the radical right to destroy public education now really since the 1980s, but it has taken on an entirely new level of viciousness really since the Trump administration, which very deliberately went after education. And this is old, of course, the attempt, for example, to get rid of public education and replace it with taxpayer-funded vouchers. Huge, huge problem in this country. But also it all comes down to this idea that public education is indoctrinating, their word, children into a series of beliefs that they consider undermine both patriarchy and Christianity. And so what you see right now, and J.D. Vance, who is running as the vice, that. I always try and do the IDs for people who aren't paying close attention, but if you don't know who the vice presidential candidate for the Republicans is at this point, maybe it's a little late to try and be teaching you. J.D. Vance is very clear about how the radical right needs to take over all the pieces that he says have been captured. And he says they have captured business and entertainment and the law and especially public education. And I always like to point out when he says that, a very famous quotation from 2021, we are they. These are our values that are in the public school system. These are community values. These are the values of democracy that they are trying to destroy. And if you read Moms for Liberty, you know that they are, on their email list, you know that they believe that they are defending their version of liberty, which is highly Christian, highly limited, very restricting on what kids can learn, with the idea that we're going to destroy public schools. And by destroying public schools, and this is so key, you are not simply destroying your children's future, because they do have to understand science, for example, and math and things like that, and the rest of the world. You are destroying democracy. This is a very deliberate attempt to destroy the concept of those shared values of being treated equally before the law and having a say in your government. And crucially, all those curricula that the vouchers and the homeschoolers, in that there's a bunch of different kinds of homeschoolers, but the homeschoolers on the radical right use, not only strip away from our country the experiences of marginalized populations, what always jumps out to me is they strip away agency.
They make it clear to students that they cannot change the country. They cannot change their futures. They must accept what their betters, either their Christian betters or their richer betters or their white betters or their male betters, have told them is the way the world should be. And one of the things that public school does so incredibly well is it introduces children to the concept that they can control their future, which is the heart of democracy. So people like you doing it on the front lines, man, this is where it's at.
Truly on the front lines, total warriors for democracy. Who's inspired by these women? Okay, so we are going to welcome, I believe Angela or Shannon or Lindsay, you all have, many of you submitted questions for Heather, I think, especially on those buses. And so our team has been working to kind of go through all those and ask some questions that are representative of those questions that got asked. So I thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're amazing. All right, let's hear it, Angela. Angela from North Carolina, another state that's working so hard out there.
Okay. So the first question, Heather, is what is our best course of action if the worst happens and we are facing 2025 with leaders and courts determined to break down the pillars that support our democracy?
So I'm so glad somebody started with that because, no, I mean this. And it's funny, I recognize that if you read my letters, you can kind of see the direction I'm going with this. I want to assure you that no matter what happens on November 5th, the sun is going to come up on November 6th and on November 7th and on November 8th. Regardless of what happens, the work that we are doing is going to go on. And the thing that I've seen a lot, people saying, oh, I remember 2016 and how horrible it was and how terrified we were. And many of us remember that as a really bad night. But think of how much better organized we are now. Think of how many more friends we have. Think about the ways in which we have already altered the structure of our democracy. So if the worst happens, you know, I think all of us are going to need to step back a little bit in the end of next week. I will continue to write the letters, but I am going to sleep like nobody has ever slept before. So I think we all need to pull back a little bit. But on the other side of that, what I would urge people to do, regardless of who wins, is to recognize that the work is unfinished. And you cannot do it all yourself. That's overwhelming. You know, one of the things you might notice I rarely write about is climate change. I care so incredibly profound about climate change. But my sister is a climate scientist. I leave that to her. My lane is over here, right? You cannot do it all. Pick what it is that you care about and what your skills match. And if that means that you are arranging flowers for local nursing homes, you do that and you do it the best way you can. If it means you can work with red, white, and blue, you do that. If it means you're a lawyer who can defend people who are in being incarcerated, you do that. Because if you do what you love, you bring joy to it. And authoritarianism cannot take root in a population that is full of joy. So even just living a life with joy is a form of resistance. Even just waking up and breathing is a form of resistance. So that work is going to carry forward no matter what happens. And, you know, and the other piece of that, of course, is that you look around you and you think, are they really going to stuff all this back into a bottle? I mean, what does that look like? Do you really think that's going to happen? That what we're doing here, people are going to say, oh, never mind, it was a good ride and now I'm done? I don't think that's going to happen. So when I think about what's coming, I, as I say, think it's a movement, and movements do not win everything all the time, but they push the ball forward. And no matter what happens on November 5th, we have pushed the ball forward, and it's going to continue to go forward. We also know that by 2028, the demographics of the country will have shifted such that the majority that we have now will be a super majority by 2028. So So have faith, have faith, joy. If in fact the real worst happens and people's lives are in danger and all the things that could go with that, one of the things that you've probably heard me say before is that nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to be a hero. They wake up in the morning and they say, I got to get to work. Oh crap, I forgot the laundry. It's got to be washed again. I need to get food on the table for the kids. Oh my God, I forgot to pay my bills. They get out of bed and they put their feet on the floor. And if they're good people, they do the next right thing. They don't set out to save the world. They just do the next right thing. And for this country not to be destroyed by an authoritarian will just require a majority of us to get up and do the right thing. Help the person next to you. Don't turn in the person that you know is undocumented. Help somebody get medical care. Just do the next right thing, even if all that means is keeping your mouth shut. And then out of the midst of us will come the heroes that we need to take America in the directions it should be. So even though everybody's frightened, turn to your friends, turn to what you love, and by God, do the next right thing even when it's hard. Enough of us do that, we'll be okay.
I just want to say quickly, red, white, and blue is never meant to exist for a single election cycle. No matter what, we're going to still be going. And we want every single one of you to be a part of that. And the other thing I want to say is that politicians don't get to decide the outcome of elections in this country. Voters do. And so we are not going to know an outcome on election night. I think we know. I also think there's a very high chance Trump, declares victory at 9:30 just for fun.
So I think we expect that he's going to declare victory.
Yeah.
But we're already sort of on that. One of the things I don't know if you've noticed within the last several months, and I'm afraid I can't really put a time on it today now, is the rapid response of the Democrats and the people who are opposing Trump has been lightning fast. And it is partly from the Harris-Walz administration, from people like us going, nope, community note on that one. No, that's false. And being all over it immediately. So when he says he has won, North Carolina is one that I'm watching, or Pennsylvania, which is deliberately the vote counting is delayed in Pennsylvania quite deliberately to open up the possibility for somebody to declare an early victory, even though the votes have not come in yet. I suspect there will be extraordinarily rapid response, and we can all be part of that, saying, what are you talking about? There's no way you've won. I mean, you saw that in 2020, but we didn't have the tools then to push back. I remember looking at that TV and going, what do you mean you've won? Like, this is ridiculous, like 2 o'clock in the morning. But everybody was sort of shocked going, he can't say that, but he could. Now we know he will say and do anything. And we're ready for that.
That's right. Okay, Angela. Oh, yes.
Yes,
Janet.
I have the next question. Heather, this is something I hear from red, white, and blue members all over the country. And it's a two-parter. Is there any way you believe Trump wins? And if he takes the presidency by cheating, can our democracy survive?
Okay, so if you look at the way that people have approached this election, you cannot persuade me that at any time in this campaign, Trump or the people working with him believed he would win the popular vote, right? He's made no effort to reach out to voters. He straight up told Nikki Haley voters he didn't want them. He went up to the Madison Square Garden rally and saw just how many people he could infuriate. And he has increasingly doubled down on his shrinking base. I would also point out to you, and maybe this would be of use talking to people, he is not mentally okay. He is not mentally okay. And aside from, that's not a medical judgment in terms of his personality, which I'd be happy to go into as well. All you have to do is look at how how his vocabulary has gotten simpler, how he is unable to finish a sentence, how he is all over the map, and his lack of inhibitions are all signs that point to a layperson, I'm not a doctor, saying, oh, I saw this in my elderly neighbors as they cease to be able to interface with the world. Trump is not okay. And what you're looking at with a Trump election is J.D. Vance and Peter Thiel, and that's a whole nother kettle of fish. But but he has doubled down on this idea that he could create a small group of people, and then he is pumping them up for violence. And you have seen this again and again, most recently with his attack on Liz Cheney, which his people are trying to spin as, oh, he was just talking about her war policies. Oh, come on. You know, just, oh, come on, stop that. That is absolutely gaslighting. That's imagery you absolutely don't use in this country unless you are trying to stir up violence. Think of the Proud Boys, Stand Back and Stand By. You know, he knows exactly what he's doing. And it seemed to me pretty clear for a long time, his plan was to stir up enough violence in swing states that those counts would be hard to determine by the states. Remember, it's the states that certify the election results, so that there would not be a path to 270 for his opponent, and the election would be thrown into the House of Representatives, or that the Supreme Court would step in. Now, those things remain possible. It's really important to remember those things remain possible. But I've been watching very closely whether or not people really were willing to turn out any longer to create, but he can stand against the system that indicted him. He was so busily begging people to come stand against his trial that he kept going out to the cameras and going, oh, they've blocked off the street because so many people are here. No, they didn't. There were like 3 people there, and one was in a clown suit. You know, not making that up. And then he tried to get people to get in that truck convoy that was going to go down to the border, and he got 19 F-150s. I mean, I literally can do better than that in the parking lot of my supermarket, right? And then they got detoured anyway and ended up at a religious rally, and all got pissed and went home. So I'm sorry, got angry and went home. So it's not clear to me he's going to be able to whip up the kind of violence he wants. He's also trying to create real confusion around the legal system around the ballot boxes. This is not new to the lawyers who are working on the other side. They are very much on top of this. So that's all out there. I am not sure it is going to happen. You know, lots of people are hiding under their beds. I'm not there. You know, I'm not there to hide under my bed simply because of these other signs. Now I don't predict the future. Now, that being said, there's a problem with the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court really has been putting its finger on the scale for him in a really big way, and this is deeply problematic. But what I would say to all of you in this moment, both here at home and on streaming, we cannot affect that. We cannot affect those pieces of the equation. And worrying about them is just taking years off your life, and unless you're a lawyer who can be there working on those cases, which more power to you, do not let that derail you. Our role right now for the next 3 days is to make this such a blowout for the Democrats that it will not be believable for states to say, oh, we don't know who won, and for it to be so unpopular for the Supreme Court to step in and destroy its legitimacy by siding for Trump that everybody backs off. That's where we have control, is to make this an absolute blue wave that, as I say, I don't think the legacy media is picking up. And we're having this long conversation, and the pollsters, we're having this long conversation about why the election looks the way it does on paper. And maybe it does. Maybe, we don't know what's going to happen. But, look at the people that Harris and Walz are turning out. They are literally having to turn. There were 75,000 people at her speech on the ellipse. They were they spilled all the way down to the mall. The last night in Wisconsin, she filled to the rafters one of the state expo buildings. His hallway was, really small. I mean, the hall that he barely filled. The momentum is definitely on the side of people who want to preserve democracy. As I say, the Democrats, the independents, and more traditional Republicans. And we got 3 days to get those the people who don't usually vote. I'm so tired, I can't even remember what the word is.
None of us can. Yeah.
What is it? Non-normal voters, non-common vote,
Low propensity
low
voters.
propensity voters. I see way too many syllables for me at this point. Low propensity voters. This is what our job is. This is what we have control over. So do not lay in bed at night going, oh my God, what's he going to do in Arizona? There's nothing we can do about what he's going to do in Arizona. What we can do is get enough people out to the votes through the rally tool around the country, through the systems you have here in Florida, knocking on doors, talking to people, using the rally tool, flooding social media, getting people to the polls, because we know if they get to the polls, they are voting for democracy, they are voting for bodily autonomy, they are voting for education, they are voting for those things that have traditionally made America great. That's what we can worry about. And then we'll pick it up, the rest of it up, after the election. But until then, do not borrow trouble. Do what you can do on the ground today to make it so you don't have to worry about the trouble in a number of days.
Let's make good trouble.
There's a thought.
Okay, we are going to wrap up here, but we are going to do a photo line with you, Heather, because people I think want to have a little something, to take with you. So we are going to be lining
Do
up.
I get to say one last thing?
You
know I always
get
have to say one last thing.
Say one last thing, and then I just want to thank people as well. Go ahead.
I want to thank you all.
Yes.
Because, what I do is a very, very lonely business. But I recognize that I'm only able to do it because of you all. And what we are really looking at in America right now is whether or not democracy is a viable proposition for such a huge country and such a diverse country. And there are a lot of people who think it's not, and they want to put an authoritarian in charge. And they always ask me why I have hope, and I say because of you. 10 years ago, would you have been here doing this? I wouldn't have been. And what we have discovered, I think, is not only the decency amongst all of us that has really been buried for the last 40 years in many ways, but we are recognizing the very principles of those people who looked at a world dominated by kings and oligarchs and who said, no, it is possible for people to create the guardrails that enable them to have conversations to govern themselves. And that is such a freaking radical concept. And, when I set out on everything that has happened, the only guide I really had was Abraham Lincoln, who said things like that. And he really is my North Star. And I would look at him and I would say, well, he pulled it off in a world where only white men could vote. And sometimes when you read the nastiness and you see what happens to people who are running against Moms for Liberty characters, and you see about all the awful stuff happening around us, you kind of pull into your shell and you think maybe it's wrong, maybe democracy doesn't really work, and that we had a nice go of it, but it's not going to work. And then I look out at all of you, and I look at everybody who's turned out for Red, Wine, and Blue, and I look out for all the people who show up on my webcasts and all the people who are out knocking on the doors and running for office and speaking back to power and talking about the things that matter to them and that they think belong in a democracy. And honest to God, that's what keeps me going. And I think, you know what? We are putting our names on the list of those great American heroes who came before us. Abraham Lincoln for sure, but he couldn't have been who he was without the people who voted for him. And Fannie Lou Hamer and Dr. Hector Garcia and all those people who said, you know what, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to do the next right thing. And I look out at you all and I think, by God, this is a great country. Democracy is the wave of the future, and we can do it because we are doing it together. So thank you all for everything that you are doing. Thank you.
Love the dramatic music. Okay, so we are going to be doing a photo line for anyone who's interested. It's going to start on the side of the stage here. There's a lot of people here, so out of respect for our fellow Americans, let's keep it moving here, all right? Let's give some love to Heather, but keep it moving. Thank you all so much for coming, and to everyone online as well.
I want to talk about red wine and blue. Red wine and blue. Red wine and blue. Red wine and blue.
Oh, sorry, you have it.
Okay, right here.
Look around, there's something going down, but we're looking up. No matter how they try to take us down, we're gonna keep it up. We move with confidence, we're making a difference wherever we are. Good trouble is not too far. We've got the fire, we've got the grit, through the thick of it. So powerful we are. So powerful we are. So if you see us coming, just know we're making a change, and we're not running. No, we're not going away. We stand together, and we can stop the rain. Just know that if we came to make a change, make a change, make a change, make a change. Oh yes, we came to make a change together. Side by side, troublemakers, head high. Oh, the journey may be long, but we still keep.
Wait, okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Do you want? Oh, yeah. Oh. Okay, there's a few. Oh, yeah. Hello. Oh, so while you all are, well,